Shalom and welcome everyone to the ICEJ weekly webinar series. I'm David Parsons, a Vice President and Spokesman here at the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, coming to you from our new TV studios. And we've got an exciting show today talking about Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to Washington. Bibi goes to Washington, and to help us understand what's going on, his visit is already, he's already been there a couple of days, but he's got some important meetings on Thursday with President Biden and then Vice President Kamala Harris, and also on Friday with former President Donald Trump, but he's already given his speech in Congress. And to help us understand all this, we have our good friend Josh Reinstein. Good to see you, Josh.
Great to be back on the show.
Yes. Josh, for those who still may not know, he's the director of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus. We're just past 20 years. He's been directing that from the start, and also president of the Israel Allies Foundation, which is a network, a series of sister caucuses, pro-Israel caucuses in parliaments around the world. He helped launch that effort, and I think it's around 60 some countries that there are now sister caucuses.
53, but we're getting close. We should launch another 3 by the end of the year.
Wonderful, and we've traveled together to start some of these, to help launch some of them, and also the author of Trump, Titus and the Triumph of Israel.
Titus, Trump, and the Triumph of Israel, the Power of Faith-Based Diplomacy.
Okay.
It's a long title.
Very good, very good. But Titus, Trump, and the Triumph of Israel. All right, this is not Netanyahu's first rodeo in Washington. He's been many times since he first served back in the 90s when Clinton was president, but it's actually his fourth joint address to joint session of Congress. I don't know if there's any other world leader who's even done 2. So this is quite a remarkable record, but you know, he's got a long history with all these different presidential administrations in Washington. What were some of those prior ones, and how is this one different?
Well, as you mentioned, he has the world record, the Guinness World Record for speaking at the joint session of Congress with 4. And no other world leader has ever done that before. The record before him was 3. I believe he was tied with the record before that. And this was a hard one. You know, this was a tightrope. They're in the middle of an election.
That really makes it different.
That makes it different. There's a lot of news breaking. The assassination attempt on President Trump, the resignation of Joe Biden just a week before. I think people were nervous. People didn't know what to expect. And I think what we saw was a master class. I think maybe of the 4 times he spoke to Congress, is probably his best and strongest appearance.
He has some really strong appearances at the UN General Assembly, of course, and his graphs about how far along they are in enriching uranium and stuff. But it was very powerful, this speech. Israelis expect their prime minister, one of their top jobs is to always guard and maintain Israel's relationship, special relationship with the United States, and especially whoever is in the White House. But Netanyahu, he grew up as a teenager, some in Philadelphia. He studied at MIT in Massachusetts. He's served so long, been to Washington, New York so many times. He's kind of different. He's got Ron Dermer as his main sidekick, who is from Miami, made Aliyah, and was Israel's ambassador to U.S., Netanyahu's closest advisor. So they kind of know how to skirt the edge here in relations with U.S. presidents. This whole war, how would you assess Netanyahu and the relationship with Biden and some of the tensions that have been there over the war?
I think that the Prime Minister did a great job of trying to manage the situation. The Biden administration has been very antagonistic to Israel, despite all the warm speeches, the public statements, the PR, by bringing the warships and things like that. When you look on the ground, you see people in the Biden administration parroting the Hamas talking points about, famine and civilian casualties that didn't happen. You also see a lot of pressure for us to stop the war. Don't go into Rafah was the main mantra of the Biden administration, because you can't do it without civilian casualties. And as he mentioned in the speech, that hasn't happened. In fact, there's been almost none. And it was essential for the victory of the war. You also have the delay of weapon shipments that we need desperately because of the Northern Front and things of that effect. So under this type of pressure and this type of administration, it's very hard to keep it cordial, to be appreciative. But I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu has really towed the line and made it in a way that he is appreciative of all the good things, and he's not really pushing back on the bad too much, although you saw in the speech yesterday, he mentioned the weapon shipments and that we need emergency weapon shipments to be sent. He doesn't really point out the other things in a way to try to keep things bipartisan.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that Netanyahu, more than any other, there's no other Israeli leaders, whether any rivals over the recent decades or even right now, someone like Benny Gantz, he wouldn't press the envelope as much as Netanyahu has done with the Biden administration, just because Bibi knows the terrain, he knows he has the support in Washington, in Congress, especially on the Republican side. Is that fair to say?
Look, he has a lot of experience. He had to deal with 4 years of the Obama administration, the Iran JCPO day.
8 years.
Yeah. Oh, 8 years. Sorry, that's right. He was also the prime minister before that, so he had 8 years of that. He's now had 3.5 years of the Biden administration. Yeah. He's had a tough go, but he knows how to do it. He knows how to maneuver. He knows how to keep it cordial. I don't think anyone in Israel in that area could do a better job of that. And you see a lot of times, even when we had the government for a year and a half without Benjamin Netanyahu, it was basically just a yes government rubber stamp to the U.S. government. What they asked for, they got, and there wasn't a lot of pushback. Here you see a lot of pushback on things that matter, and not so much pushback on things that don't so much matter.
Yeah, you're probably right that Obama served 8 years, but Netanyahu came back into power those last 4 years of Obama. One more question before we really get into his speech. There was a lot of hope, building up expectation that maybe there would be a hostages for ceasefire deal in place before he arrived in Washington, but it didn't happen. Some of the families went with him, some refused. Can you just explain for our viewers that everyone wants the hostages back, but among the family and those really out there protesting and trying to bring them back, there's a division in the camp. Some want to give priority to prosecuting the war as the main pressure to get them.
Well, there's two different camps. There's one that says we need to ceasefire right now to get the hostage back. And then there's another camp that says, no, we need to put a lot of pressure on Hamas and fight as hard as we can right now to get them to release the hostages. I think everyone in Israel wants the hostages back. That's not a question. Within the hostage families themselves, there's two camps. There's the Bring Them Home Now, there's the Tikva Forum. So you have some hostage families saying, no, we need to fight with all we got to get them to release the hostages. And others are saying, no, we need to do whatever we have to do, even lose the war, in order to release the hostages. And I think that Bibi is somewhere in the middle of those things. I don't think that it's a reasonable thing to say we need to have a hostage deal before the speech, because it doesn't depend on Benjamin Netanyahu. What we've offered to Hamas is so generous and so over the top, with releasing thousands of terrorists with blood on their hands, to pulling back all the military within Gaza for a period of time, that I don't think we can go further without risking the lives of more people here in Israel. So really the question is, will Hamas cave?
Yeah, you're at a point where you've got Hamas on the ropes. Do you go ahead and try and finish them off so they cannot make a quick recovery in Gaza? They're going to try to, no matter what you do, but you can try and so diminish them. some other forces will rise.
I think to put it another way, what we're saying is we are going to finish you off to the last man if you don't release the hostages. And I think that's the position that makes the most sense.
Okay, now we get to his speech. He was feisty. From what I saw, he was, giving it to them, especially the protesters outside, these signs, gays for Gaza. He says, this is like chickens for KFC. What do you think of the overall speech?
I'm someone who does a lot of public speaking, and when I see Netanyahu speaking, it's kind of like the movie Mozart, where you see Salieri, and he's just like, I'm a musician too, and he sees Mozart, and it's just like, wow, there's no, it's another level of public speaking, because he has the ability to engage so many different people and cultures across denominations. He's talking to all Americans, but he's really talking to all the world. This speech was broadcast live in Germany, in France, and in Iran. So, he has to really hit all these points in a way that doesn't make it seem that he's being too aggressive, doesn't make it seem that he's being offensive. And I just think that he hit every single mark. The speech was forceful, yet not too forceful. He was confident. He hit all the right marks. It was something that really speaks to an American audience, but also every Israeli, even the ones who don't support Bibi, I think could be proud of it. He really went into everything, from the obscene ICC trials to what's happening with Iran, to the protesters in campuses. He hit every single point in a way that was entertaining, so that people wouldn't leave after half an hour of the speech. Everyone stayed to the end to see what's going to happen. I was really concerned going into the speech, even knowing that Bibi is such a great speaker, because of the timing with the elections and what's going on and what can we achieve. I think
a lot of volatility in the political season in America. Here, Josh, you see there's someone. This is one of the ranking Democrats, but who should be there?
That was supposed to be Kamala Harris.
It's tradition. As vice president, she's sort of president of the Senate, and if there's a foreign leader giving an address to the joint session, you have the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. She should be sitting there. She went off to a
Not only that, we all remember her when Zelensky spoke. She was holding the Ukraine flag and draping it over her. So yeah, it was very shocking to see that she didn't show up for this.
Where's the Israel flag, Kamala?
Forget the Israel flag. Just to be there. There is bipartisan support for Israel. I mean, in my caucus, the Congressional Israelites Caucus, we have 30 Democrats. They're very strong on Israel. But in this administration, it seems that there's a lot of pandering to the pro-Hamas, anti-Israel part of the party. I think it's a huge mistake, but only time will tell.
Yeah, I think there were 70 Democrats between the Senate and the House that did not show up. Some announced they were boycotting it openly, others just didn't show up, compared to, I think, around 50 during Netanyahu's speech on the Iran nuclear deal that was taking shape back in 2015 when he addressed the joint session, and really against the will of President Obama at the time, but went in and criticized the deal that was cooking then. But I think it just shows there is a serious problem on the Democratic side, that bipartisan pro-Israel consensus in Congress that we've seen for decades, that it's breaking down on the Democratic side.
Absolutely. I think you can also see it from if you watch the RNC. The RNC, half of it was about Israel, was about the Jewish community. You had the head of the RJC speak, you had the family hostages, everyone chanting, bring them home now. You had people who were attacked in university speaking. And so there was a lot of pro-Israel support. There was a lot of excitement about Jewish people. I think that if you went to the DNC and wore a kippah, there's a good chance you'd get attacked. And so the base of the Democratic Party is very anti-Israel, very antagonistic. And then you have these people who are pro-Israel, but more and more the leadership of the Democratic Party are coming out against Israel too. You saw Nancy Pelosi, she boycotted the speech. She said it was the worst speech she's ever heard. Senator Schumer, the Speaker of the Senate, the top position, he said that Bibi should resign. Kamala Harris says that she gets excitement and joy to see the passion of the pro-Hamas demonstrators. So it's not just a problem like the squad. It's now becoming
that whole progressive wing.
It's all becoming part of the leadership, which is an issue.
Okay. Now, as far as the details of what Netanyahu spoke about, I think we've heard it here in Israel, most everything, and it's good for him to give that firsthand account there to those members of Congress. But he talked about post-war Gaza. This has been part of the dispute with the Biden administration. Netanyahu, Israel, you got to show us what you think Gaza is going to look like after the war. And of course, Bibi says, look, first you have to defeat Hamas. Otherwise, Gaza is going to look like Hamas after the war, whatever you plan. You can plan all day, you got to defeat them, and let's do that first. But he did, and some media report says he detailed what's going to happen. I think it was just fairly broad strokes. It wasn't a lot of detail. The IDF will remain in full security control oversight, and it'll be a demilitarized and de-radicalized Gaza Strip.
Well, I think you heard something new for the first time. This is an idea that's been going out around Israel, but the first time the Prime Minister said it, and that's that he's looking for a Marshall Plan. You know, if you add everything up, he talked about Germany after World War II, he talked about Japan after World War II. He calling the Marshall Plan the Abraham Pact. But what he's saying basically is we need to go in there, we need to have security control, we need a new education process so that the people living there aren't subject to hate and death and a death cult and also under a dictatorship, but they actually can taste the rewards of freedom and democracy and have a better life. So I think the fact that he came out and really detailed a Marshall Plan for the first time is significant.
Yeah, the denazification of Germany took several decades while the Allies were there occupying the area, and of course Japan as well, that worship of the emperor, and they they didn't know what to do in defeat. But that was really the main failure of Oslo. Even Dennis Ross and some of the other peace processors said the whole education and radicalization of the Palestinians to hate and demonize Israel and call for its destruction and glorifying martyrdom in this fight is the highest honor, that this, Bibi saying this has to stop, and the West and friendly Arab regimes are going to have to come in and re-educate the people. Is that what you're saying?
Look, Oslo, the big mistake was that they didn't diagnose the problem properly. They thought, from a Western point of view, that this was a land for peace situation where you give, Israel's like the size of a pack of matches on a football field compared to the rest of the Arab world. They thought if you give half the pack of matches to the Palestinians, you'll have peace. It doesn't make sense. They didn't realize that this is a religious war. This is a religious conflict. And so if you don't hit those points, if you don't talk about the de-radicalization, the death cult of radical Islam, then it's just a joke. And that joke turned into a horrible tragedy with the death of thousands of Israelis here in Israel. And so from the beginning, the Oslo Accords was just based on the wrong assumptions.
Anything else about his speech that stood out to you?
I think that one of the things that really stood out is his ability to speak to the American people. And we knew he had that 80% of Americans love Israel. And he really reached them. But I also think what was unique about this speech was his ability to speak to other countries as well. I believe that there's a silent majority in the West for Israel. You don't see it in the media, you don't see it in the elites, but the people on the street, they see those people with masks and Hamas flags. They know what terrorists look like. They look like terrorists. They have the keffiyehs and the mask, and they're screaming death to Jews, and they're scared. And so I think that this was a way to speak to them and to give them a sense of purpose and understanding about what's going on so that they can speak about this situation properly. So I think that was one of the main highlights. Another thing that I thought was brilliant was just introducing the soldiers. There's this thing online that the soldiers are these colonizing white, people, but that's not the truth. You know that the majority of Israelis are not white. I mean, the vast majority.
They're Sephardic,
they're
Middle
Sephardic,
Eastern Jews.
Middle Eastern Jews. So the people that they saw, you saw Ethiopian Jews, you saw Arab Muslims who fight in the army, you saw a cross section of the heroes. He called them the Maccabees that were there. And then the third point that I thought, and he does this every time, but I think he does it better than anyone else, is pointing out the biblical implications. You can say whatever you want, but no one cares about UN Resolution 242. But everyone knows that Jerusalem is King David's capital. Everyone knows that this is the land where our prophets prophesied that we're not colonizers, that the Jewish people in the land of Israel are interlinked, and that the Bible is our deed to the land. And I think that he does it in a way that even if you're not a religious person, or maybe you don't even read the Bible, just from common sense and understanding of biblical principles in general, you understand it's true.
Josh, I know you don't want to go into American football right now, but this notion that Netanyahu understands America because he grew up some there. Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, has helped fund football fields here in Israel, and they had some NFL greats, Hall of Famers here. Joe Montana. It was great to see these guys. I went out to see it, and Netanyahu came out, and they handed him a football, and he's left-handed, so that's sort of, for those who didn't know it, you see he's left-handed. He knew most Israelis, you hand them an American football, they don't know how to throw it. I tell you, he just went, he did the motion, he dropped back, and he threw like a perfect strike and a nice spiral to someone. And that tells you he knows America. It's quite interesting watching that. I mean, he had a nice pass there.
I grew up in Dallas, and if you can't throw a football, then you're a foreigner. Doesn't matter where you're from.
Yeah.
So I think he understands the culture. He's lived there. His English is perfect. He's a brilliant orator. Some people think he speaks better in English than Hebrew even.
Yeah.
And so I think that really came across in the speech as well.
I think among a lot of Republicans, they'd want him as a presidential candidate.
Well, that's a very important point that people don't understand. Bibi is super popular in America.
A lot of respect.
In Israel, there's a lot of people who have different feelings about him. He's been in power for so long that he's managed to bother one side of the aisle, the other side of the aisle several times. In America, I mean, the Christians love him, the Jews love him. People love Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah. Okay, now we go to the meetings that are going to be held later on Thursday and then into Friday. It was quite interesting trying to line up a meeting with Trump, but we'll talk about it. But first, he's going to meet with President Biden in the White House, who is now a lame duck, and he's the lamest of ducks, 6 months of sitting there and really can't push his own policies because he's going to be replaced. Normally it's from the election in November, whoever wins, but now that he's not going to run for re-election. Can he be really forceful? What are he and Netanyahu going to be able to talk about?
Well, it's a very good question. No one really knows the situation with Joe Biden. We don't know if he's in control of the White House, who's running the White House. Is it him? Is he making the final decisions? He didn't want to drop out of the race.
I didn't see his speech last night, but some of the reaction, he still looks very weak from COVID. We hope he recovers. And
I mean, he's been looking very weak for a very long time. The question is, who's really in charge? He didn't want to drop out of the election. He was forced out.
Yes.
They threatened. Reports say they threatened the 25th Amendment on him to take him out as president. They said if you want to, end your term, then you got to play ball. So the question is, what kind of Joe Biden is he going to meet? And who's calling the shots? If it's Joe Biden, I think that because of that 40, 50 year long relationship that they have, then Benjamin Netanyahu has a chance to get some things done. I think the number one thing on his list is getting the weapons. They've played the weapons, they've stopped some shipments. We got this $14 billion legislation passed that we're going to get weapons, and then the weapons
The
stalled.
administration, Biden proposed 14. I think Congress said, let's give them 17 billion.
Yeah, but a bunch of that money was designated for the rebuilding of Gaza and supporting, unfortunately, supporting terror organizations and things like that. So the question is, can he get the weapons slowdown to stop? I think that's the number one thing he's trying to get.
And he said that in his speech.
He mentioned it. He brought it out very publicly. This has been a very public issue. I think that they released half of the shipment that was stalled, the one that we know about. There's other ones as well, that so people see that there's some sort of process there. And then the secondary issue is that of the hostages. You know, Bibi's under a lot of pressure from the Biden administration to just cut any deal he can. Just cut a deal, do whatever they say. And to the point where a deal that was turned down by Israel that was proposed by Hamas, the Biden administration proposed that exact same deal and said it was Israel's deal. Yes. You know, so much pressure going out, so many different ways.
That way it was proposed by Hamas before Rafah. After Rafah, they've changed their tune. Any idea why?
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things that happened in Rafah that was so significant, why we had to go in there, I would have went there first at the beginning of the war, is that all the smuggling routes and all the weapons were coming in through Rafah. They had two-story tunnels where cars were coming through with ballistic missiles and things of that effect. So, you know, the fact that they were able to cut that down now, there's no more oxygen going to the war on the Hamas side. Exactly. That's very significant. Also, the killing of a lot of the major Hamas leaders. Every day we hit someone somewhere. I think that it's wearing on them. I think they're getting tired. I think they're looking for a way out. But I think that we have to keep the pressure up. The question is, will Bibi stand up to the pressure from Biden administration to say no, ceasefire at any cost, and let's just do it right now?
Yeah. Okay, so President Biden has said, look, we need to end the war. We need to free the hostages, but we got to ease the suffering in Gaza. Israel's put all that food in there, and there is worry about epidemics and stuff. They talk about security for Israel and dignity, freedom, and self-determination for the Palestinians. If you allow them to have self-determination, they still want the whole of Israel, so of the land of Israel. So, you know, you just can't, if it's self-determination for Gaza and there's people who want to live at peace with Israel in Gaza, then that seems a little more acceptable. And both, I want to try and compare Biden and his Vice President Kamala Harris. Both have said the U.S. commitment to Israel is ironclad. We've heard it out of both their mouth, but the one time Biden said it on his Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day speech, fighting anti-Semitism, ironclad commitment to Israel. The next day, he announces, I have an arms shipment hold up on those heavy bunker buster bombs because we don't want them going into Rafah. But what kind of daylight are we going to see between Biden and Harris with her running for office and trying to appease that progressive wing of the party more than
we're looking. These are a number of different questions. Let's address them one at a time. First of all, on the list of things that the Democrats want, whether it be, you know, ceasefire or more humanitarian aid, which is already at such a high, the biggest thing that is an absolute no is the Palestinian state. They're pushing a Palestinian state despite October 7th. Since October 7th, the Palestinian state in Israel, the two-state solution, is dead.
It's a non-starter.
It's a non-starter. It's not like it's a right-wing thing anymore or even a centrist thing. It's every politician will tell you we cannot have a terror state on our border. They voted last week 68-9, saying from all the political parties, it would have been even 110-10 probably if everyone was in the House, in the Parliament. They are not going to do a Palestinian state. It's dead. The fact that he mentions this is offensive to Israelis. They find that very offensive. The other issues that he brings up are not real issues, but a way to try to give a fig leaf to the other side, you know, the pro-Hamas people in the party and the Hamas terrorists. We are the most humanitarian army in the history of mankind. I think Bibi mentioned that yesterday, that never before in urban warfare has there been so much work to try to limit civilian casualties, and never before in human history has it worked so well. You know, if you look at Mosul or Fallujah, it was 1 combatant to 9 citizens. In Gaza, it's 1 combatant to half a citizen. I mean, it's really astronomical. It doesn't even make so much sense how we're able to do it that way. And that's at the risk of our own soldiers. You know, they built that $320 million pier to nowhere. 2 Israelis died protecting that. That cost us 2 lives of Israeli heroes just to protect this fantasy of a pier that was going to bring in more food. Now, getting food in the Gaza is not the problem. It's that Hamas steals it. So bringing it from the land or the sea doesn't make the difference. And so these are just like PR, public diplomacy mentions for that part of the Democratic White House. Now, the next part of the question that you asked is very different. Kamala Harris has been very antagonistic towards Israel. She's mentioned that she has such a heart for the pro-Hamas, demonstrators. It means so much to her. She called for ceasefire in March, no matter what, under unconditional ceasefire to stop the war. She's been very, very antagonistic to the Israeli people, but also she's been very soft on anti-Semitism in Israel, as in America as well. So the Jewish people are getting nervous too. I don't think
even though she's married to a Jewish man.
I mean, they always say that, George Soros is Jewish, but who's a worse enemy to Israel than George Soros? Bernie Sanders is Jewish, but he's one of the most antagonistic senators there. Your religion doesn't depict your political views. I don't think that Kamala Harris is anti-Semitic. I don't think that she has any problem with the Jewish people in any way.
But
she married a Jewish person, but she's a politician. She knows what her party wants. She's very liberal, and she believes that we have to get the Big Tent together. I don't think this is a personal issue. But that being said, it's going to be a very different relationship between Benjamin Netanyahu and Biden, who's been friends for 40 years, and now they have to each work towards their own base within political spectrum. And Kamala Harris, who's just been very antagonistic, wouldn't come to this. This is a big snub that she didn't come to the speech, unprecedented. Maybe things will change.
Yeah.
Benjamin Netanyahu's a very charming guy. Maybe he has an in. Maybe there's a plan we don't know about. But on face value, it looks like Kamala Harris is going to be a lot harder to deal with and build the U.S.-Israel relations than Biden Netanyahu.
I think we've seen this all along. There's a real mixed message coming out of her, ironclad, but then she starts talking about Israel's violating international humanitarian law in Gaza, which is all those anti-Semites in the UN system, Francisca Albanese, and all these people who have been crying about this all along. I don't like when she starts using that language in this sort of warfare situation, but she did. On the one side, I think Sheryl Sandberg used to be an exec with Facebook, who did this very powerful movie about the sexual violence against Jewish women on October 7 and since, the ones in captivity, and Kamala Harris hosted a showing of that, I think, at the White House. So, she has spoken out against it, but then she tells these campus protesters, I can feel your passion. I appreciate your passion, which is not good. But this mixed message to skip sitting behind Netanyahu during this speech, now that she's the Democratic presumptive nominee, and skipping that traditional role to go off to talk to a black fraternity, but then meeting Netanyahu today, to me it sends the message, I'm not here to listen to you, I'm here to lecture you.
Look, what people say doesn't really matter. I mean, there's a lot of statements, and these are political calculations. It only matters what people do.
The actions, yeah.
And what we're seeing people doing is not good right now. It's not a healthy relationship as I see it. There's a big focus on stopping the weapons. Now, you have to look at the weapons deal, for example. People don't understand how the weapons work here. So what we've done is we've signed a long-term deal with America that we get $3.3 billion worth of weapons that we can purchase in America. In exchange, we give our technology We do joint technology programs so that we can enhance their security. But more than that, we can't make military deals with other countries without their permission. So estimated, even very conservatively, we're losing about $10 billion a year in weapons deals. We're losing our own internal industry of manufacturing weapons. We have the ability to do that. We're one of the biggest economies in the West. So the question is why? Why did we take this deal of getting the $3.3 billion that we have to use there and we give away our sovereignty on weapons? It's because the strategic pact between Israel and America is so important to us. It's the American alliance. It's that we work together on these issues. When you withhold weapons to Israel
in an existential war,
in an existential war on 7 fronts, while we're getting pounded in the south and pounded in the north, that's a major, major issue. That goes beyond any statement, that goes beyond anything that you can say publicly. I think the meetings will be cordial. I think both will come out, there'll be private meetings, you won't know what is said, and have a real brave faith about how it went. But in the end, if the weapons don't start flowing again, it didn't go well.
Yeah. A month to 6 weeks ago, this was a big bone of contention between the Biden White House and Netanyahu. Personally, he really said, you're holding up weapons, not just the heavy bombs, but others. It's slow, you're slow dragging it, and they're saying no. And I think it's come out that Netanyahu was right on this.
Oh yeah, I mean, they admitted that it's not that they slowed it, it's that at the beginning they gave it emergency, you can flow the weapons, and they stopped it.
And
so
now they're back to the normal procedure, which takes months and months.
Yeah, it's called an Italian strike. It's where the people do such a bad job, they slow play the process and bureaucracy so that it's not like they're actually striking, but it's a strike. And so what happened is that they slowed all the shipments by not speeding them up like they did at the beginning. They even held back shipments. And now this whole thing with F-35s, which was an issue for 5 years down the road, they still haven't passed even though it's sitting on Biden's desk. So this is a real issue, and the Prime Minister did a real calculation coming public with this, but it's got to the point that it's so desperate that he had to. And so he took a lot of flack in Israel as well from saying it publicly in America, but I think that it was the right decision. Now it's out in the open. Let's see what happens.
Apologies to all our Italian viewers out there.
No, that's not a derogatory term. That's something that was actually came up in Italy. It's a strategy. You know, it's not a...
Okay. All right, what do we expect about Netanyahu's meeting with Donald Trump, which is supposed to happen on Friday? They first said Wednesday. Donald Trump announced it on Wednesday, then no Thursday, then Friday. It was kind of a runaround, but now they're meeting on Friday, which means Netanyahu will have to stay an extra day over Shabbat and only come back early next week. But they've got some fences to mend. How's that going to go?
Look, they have some personal issues between the two of them, but what people don't understand is that Donald Trump isn't pro-Israel because of Benjamin Netanyahu. He's pro-Israel because of Bible-believing Christians. They're the base of his party. He told them he's going to give them the issue of Israel, and he always keeps his word. He's a businessman. His clients are Bible-believing Christians who want to see a safe and prosperous Israel, and he's going to do it, no matter who's the president or the prime minister. And so his support for Israel is ironclad. He's the most pro-Israel president in the history of America. He did 9 of the 10 biggest asks that Israel could ever ask from America, whether it be the recognition of Jerusalem, the canceling of the Iran deal, recognition of the Golan Heights, the defunding of UNRWA. The list goes on and on. So you have a situation.
The settlements are legal.
The settlements are disputed. Now you have a situation where you have an extremely pro-Israel former president who's running for president, and the Prime Minister of Israel. They'll come to some sort of agreement on how they're going to work, even if they have personal issues. I'm not worried about that. What people are worried about in Israel is that maybe Donald Trump is actually more pro-Israel than Bibi even wants, because he is more, even though he's seen as a hawk and a conservative, he's more of a centrist, especially within this government. So the real question is, what are the issues? What are the things that they're going to want to promote together? And most people are saying that the real benefit of the Trump administration, rather than just all the support that we know we're going to get and the stuff, is that alliance he talked about, the Abraham Pact. The Abraham Pact could only happen under a Trump administration. There needs to be a carrot and a stick. And in the Biden administration, there's only carrots.
And it's a pact to defend against Iran, but also to help rebuild Gaza in a way that it's also de-radicalized from this radical Islamic jihad to destroy Israel and conquer the world.
It's a pact. It will bring in the moderate Arab countries with Israel to defend against Iran, whether it be Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, or Iran themselves. Everyone in the region doesn't want them to get nuclear weapons. It needs to be led by a strong leader who has a strong stick if things don't go well. And I think that that's going to be the focus of a Trump administration if and when they come in.
Okay. Last question. Netanyahu's going to land back here in Israel by Sunday or so. And is he going to have a prize? What sort of results can he come back and say this trip was worth it? Does he have enough through this speech in Congress? We'll have to see what these meetings are. What would you want him to come back with?
Look, it's very important, since America is our greatest and biggest ally, that he meets with the leadership. So I think that people weren't worried about the meeting with Kamala Harris or with Biden or with Trump. They want Benjamin Netanyahu there to just make the point for Israel, to make the case for Israel. What people were worried about was the speech. They said, how is the speech going to be seen? We're in the middle of like a crazy news cycle, the most crazy news cycle I've ever known, with the assassination attempt, with the resignation, with Kamala getting the support to be the candidate, and then all of a sudden Bibi shows up and he's speaking to the world about Israel where no one's really focused on it. And now I think everyone understands it was the right move.
Yeah.
And I think that will give him a lot of support.
I think with all those radicals out there protesting, pro-Hamas, burning American flags, that if Kamala Harris starts throwing them some bones, saying some things to say I'm with you on this, it's going to really hurt her in her election campaign.
Look, the juxtaposition can be clear. You have a president of Israel standing there talking about freedom, democracy, the unique relationship between Israel and America, and then you have a handful of protesters outside wearing keffiyehs and masks with Hamas flags, singing "Death to the Jews" from the River Sea, Palestine, and burning American flags. That's your choice.
Yes.
Pick.
Okay. All right. That's our time for this week's webinar. We want to thank you for joining us. We've been talking about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's trip to Washington this week. We hope this has been very valuable. Thanks again to my friend Josh Reinstein for being with us. He's again the director of the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus and president of the Israel Allies Foundation, which has an office in Washington and has been very busy and involved in this visit, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We weren't very much involved in the visit itself, but our U.S. Director Jordana McMillan got a chance to meet with the Prime Minister at a small meeting of evangelical leaders. We appreciate the awareness that the evangelical Christians are our best friends. I just want to say that you did say you're not going to mention American football, so that's kind of a point of tension, but I'm going to let it go.
Okay, that's our time. Join us again next Thursday, 3 p.m. Israel time, for our webinar series. And make sure to stay here with us at the top of the hour. You can go over to our daily global prayer gathering and pray with Christian leaders and Christian intercessors from all over the world, praying for Israel, this region, and your own countries, and especially for Israel to come out victorious in this war in Gaza. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us for this informative webinar. Be sure to subscribe to our social media channels or visit our website at icej.org for upcoming webinars and more ICEJ exclusive content.
In just a few months, this coming October, Israel will be marking 1 year since the great tragedy of October 7 last year. And we want to invite you to join us here in Jerusalem at that time to help encourage and comfort the people of Israel. The Christian Embassy will be hosting our annual Feast of Tabernacles celebration from the 16th through the 23rd of October. We will be gathering here in Jerusalem with Christians from around the world for this very timely prophetic feast. We will visit some of the worst hit areas on October 7 so you can witness firsthand what happened here in Israel. You will also meet Israelis who are starting to rebuild their lives and can encourage them on their road to recovery. We will also have a desert celebration in the lovely setting of Kfar Navdim and all our usual feast events here in Jerusalem, such as the colorful roll call of the nations and a special communion service at the Garden Tomb. But we're also going to gather here in Sacher Park and march through the streets of Jerusalem to express our love and support directly to the Jewish people. You want to be here. 1 year into this difficult conflict, there's no better time to come show your solidarity with Israel. Our feast registration is open. Visit feast.icej.org to learn more about how you can take part in this very special Feast of Tabernacles 2024.